Hey everybody, I wanted to talk to you guys pretty quickly about another cryptocurrency. This cryptocurrency I'm talking to you about today is Monero. Now the reason why I wanted to talk about Monero is it's another second generation anonymous cryptocurrency. Now I don't know as much about Monero, and Monero I'm going to give you a little caveat at the beginning of this. Um, it's got it's got a total supply of 18.5 million. And then eventually, like, it's got a continual block reward after that. It's not very high, but the reason why I wanted to tell you it's got a total supply of 18.5 million is there's currently 15 million in existence. Generally speaking, I will not advocate for coins that are getting kind of old. Obviously, I've made videos on Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin's very good. It's obviously the dominant one in the market, so it's kind of the exception. Other than that, I generally only will make videos about new coins. The reason why I keep Monero in is because of the continual block reward. That'll keep it alive for longer. And then the second reason is it's got a very low price to its market cap, and we'll get talking about that here in a little bit. But I just want to put this caveat at the beginning that Monero is an older coin, and that needs to be taken into account too when you're investing in it. As I'll show below, and like I just talked about, there's a continual 0.3 Monero block reward that'll kick in that'll actually make Monero last longer than a lot of these other second gen coins. Like Dash has half the supply of Monero, but Monero might actually last longer. I think it probably will last longer. But anyways, I'll get talking about that. So let's just get started. So firstly, Monero's got instant privacy using ring signatures, and basically the way a ring signature works is instead of like with Dash, they mix up transactions, and so they use stealth through transactions. So there's a blockchain and you can look at all the transactions, but you can't tell what any of the transactions mean. With Monero, they use these things called ring signatures, and it's basically like when you send a transaction, they will take your transaction and chop it up into bits, and these transactions will be sent to rings, and these rings are just collections of all the users on the blockchain. And so each ring will take these chopped up, or this chopped up transaction, and each ring gets a full transaction, but the chopped up transaction only gets sent to certain members of the ring. So the whole ring itself proves that the transaction is valid, but each member of the ring only gets a chopped up bit of the transaction, so they don't have the enough information to say anything about what the transaction was. But in that way, everyone proves every transaction, but they only prove a part of the transaction, so they can't trace you. So it's a very interesting method or an approach to privacy. It's very similar to zero knowledge, even though it's not zero knowledge. The next thing I want to talk about is its low price to circulating supply, and I talked about that a little bit earlier when I said it has a high volume of Monero in existence. There's already like 15 million Monero out there, and there's only going to be like 18.3 million created initially. Like I say below in the next point, there's a continual 0.3 Monero block reward that kicks out after that, but that's less than 1% of the total supply. So it's not very much, but so Monero has a lot of coins in existence, but its price is very low. It's under $100 right now, which is very interesting, especially given how private it is. It's insanely private. It's one of the most trusted coins in terms of its privacy. And what I mean by that is a lot of the coins that are private centric are sort of experimental. Dash and Monero are the ones that have gotten the most use, and Monero might actually have gotten more use than Dash. And I guess there's no real way to show that, but what I mean by that is Dash is more of an investment vehicle. Monero, people use it, I think, more for private transactions. And again, if the transactions are private, you can't prove that. But Monero's got a lot of backing for its privacy. But again, the price of Monero is under $100, so that's very low. And then this goes hand in hand with the next point, which is the continual 0.3 Monero block reward. And again, that just keeps the coin alive for longer. The reason why this is big is because the security of a network is based on its mining, and if the block reward drops to 0, like it does with most coins, like it does for something like Dash or Bitcoin, when that happens, the only way you can get a block reward is from transaction fees. Well, if transaction fees that means that your transaction fees dictate your network security. So in order for your network to be secure, transaction fees have to be high. But if transaction fees are high, no one wants to use your network. But if transaction fees are low, then you have no network security. So it's basically a catch-22. Monero solves this with the 0.3 Monero block reward, and that kicks in once it hits about 18 million Monero left, and that's less than 1%. Like I said, I would actually like a much higher percentage than that. The good news about it is that because it's such a low percentage, it'll basically stay at that percentage. It's less than 1%, so let's say it's 0.85%. If it's like 0.85%, the next year the block reward will be like 0.835%, and which is basically the same. So it basically adds like 10 to 15 years or so onto the lifespan of the coin. And then next it's got 2-minute confirmation times. This is big because with shorter confirmation times, it doesn't actually add on any network security, and so I'll do a quick rundown on how blockchain security works for everybody. Blockchain security is interlinked with time. It's very hard to pull off any sort of scam within a blockchain, but if you do it, you have to do it within a short window of time. For any blockchain, about after an hour has passed, it's super impossible. It would cost billions of dollars basically. If you're talking about something like Bitcoin, which has like a $65 billion market cap, in order to pull off a scam and steal thousands of dollars, you would have to, within an hour, it would take a lot of time, energy, and money. It could take billions of dollars. Like, your return on investment is never going to be worth it. But with 2-minute confirmation times, why that's big is because with Bitcoin, if you send a confirmation, you have to wait 10 minutes till your confirmation gets confirmed. With Monero, you have to only wait 2. So let's talk about the security that the network offers each user. In the long term, it's exactly the same, assuming that they have the same network security in the beginning, which they don't. Bitcoin is bigger, so Bitcoin has more network security. I want to make that clear. Bitcoin does have more network security, but the confirmation time doesn't give it network security. So after 10 minutes, if Monero and Bitcoin have the same network security, after 10 minutes, Monero will have 5 confirmations, Bitcoin will have 1. They will have the same network security. Each user will have the same security. But after 2 minutes on the Monero blockchain, the Monero user will have 1 confirmation. So they will have the security of 2 minutes worth of that network. While on the Bitcoin network, at 2 minutes you have no confirmations, and then at Monero at 4 minutes you have 2 confirmations, at 6 minutes you have 3, at 8 minutes you have 4. So at those points in time, before 10 minutes happens, you have more security than the people on the Bitcoin network. So that's very interesting for big corporations, and I'll get into that later on and why that is. The next thing I wanted to talk about, though, is the smooth block reward and the difficulty adjustment. The reason why this is important is because a smooth block reward will it makes it easier on miners and people who are getting into the network. That one's sort of a short one, and it's sort of very individualized towards miners. So I'll talk about that individually, and I'm going to talk about all these points individually. So let's just start then with the ring signatures and the instant privacy. So again, these ring signatures, they're instant privacy, and how they work is they basically, it's like they mix the input addresses. So you'll give people bits of transactions, but you don't give them the full thing. And so because of that, there are no addresses. Like, the blockchain's not actually addresses. Like, you can't with Bitcoin you can actually search addresses and search their full transaction history. That doesn't exist with Monero because you only have parts of addresses. I think the way that Monero started out, you could see the total transaction volume or something, and that was a security issue because there were so few people using Monero. Like, there was a time when there were only 3 transactions per block. So that if they wanted to track you, to be like, who are the 3 people who might have sent Monero during that time? It's still very hard to track somebody like that. It can be done. Like, you could track a a serious criminal if you wanted to, but you would have to have a serious reason for it. But anyways, as of September 2017, they masked that. And the good thing about ring signatures is they provide instant privacy. Right now, the only thing better than ring signatures is zero knowledge. And like I said, zero knowledge has its issues. Or two-way zero knowledge proofs have their issues. One-way zero knowledge doesn't. But other than zero coin, there's no coin whose total security and like is as trusted as Monero. So it's got, and there's no other coin that provides this privacy instantly, other than the one-way zero knowledge, which is zero coin. The cost of Monero, it's like 20 or 14 cents, I think, at the lowest right now at the time of the video, and 20 cents at the highest, so it's very low cost. I said this before, Monero, it's because it's a private based currency, it kind of has like forced itself into that area of financial transactions, which isn't bad, but that just means it's going to be used for financial transactions you don't want people to know. So like your paycheck, you don't want people to know how much you get paid every paycheck, and you'd be willing to pay 14 cents or 40 cents, you know, to sort of hide that that data, and Monero does that very well. So you'd be willing to pay that for Monero, and it also would be useful for buying big financial transactions like homes and cars. And because it's useful for big transactions, that's what you want to keep private, are generally speaking big transactions. Because of that, the low cost, like that's fine. It's not a zero cost. There are things that are zero cost, like Zcash is zero cost basically right now. I think Zcoin is basically zero cost right now, but low is fine. If it's you know, if you're taking 14 cents out of a payment for a house for financial privacy, that's not much at all. Everyone's going to be willing to do that. So the next thing I want to talk about again is its low price to circulation. It's priced 42 times less than Bitcoin. That's the number I want to get out there that really matters. That might change actually at the time that this video gets processed. But I mean, the price of Bitcoin went up to like 4,000. I think Monero might have hit 100. Actually, the price of Bitcoin's hit 5,000 by the time of this video already. I think it's around 4,000 right now. But anyways, it's 42 times less than Bitcoin at the time of this video, and that's very interesting because of the privacy that Monero offers. A lot of people use Bitcoin because they think it's private. Well, like I said before, there are certain individuals that I can point to and tell you exactly how many Bitcoin they know. You can do this with anyone on the Bitcoin network with enough work. Yes, it requires work, but that's just weird. I don't think I should be able to do that at all unless that person wants me to. Now you can make the case that some of these people want me to because their wallet addresses are known publicly, and I'm not going to tell you who they are, you know, how to look up their addresses and things like this. I'm just saying it can be done, and it's not that hard. And that's just weird. I don't think I should know certain people are millionaires, but I do because of Bitcoin and the Bitcoin blockchain, and I just really think that's weird. But again, because that's weird, that's why I think that the price, like it's priced so low, but it offers a lot that Bitcoin doesn't. You know, Bitcoin's overhyped in a lot of ways. Bitcoin's got a lot of weird quirks that cause it issues, and this continual Monero block reward, if you look at Bitcoin and Monero, they both have about similar supply. I think Bitcoin's actually at 16.5 million right now, and like I said, if the longer a coin exists, the lower its block reward gets, and so Bitcoin already is lower in terms of its block reward than Monero, and it doesn't have that continual block reward later on. So Monero should last for 10 to 20 years longer than Bitcoin. It's probably not going to last a full 20 years. It's probably going to be closer to 10 to 15. But anyways, it's going to last a lot longer than Bitcoin. So as Bitcoin dies, that money's got to go somewhere, and it's probably going to go to things like Monero. Again, the low price to circulation, one thing that will cause is it causes low sell pressure for miners. One thing that's good about that is that miners still have a block reward right now. But with something like Dash or something like Zcash or Zcoin, especially some of those new coins that have only been out for 1 or 2 years, there's a lot of miners selling those coins, so you have to wait till the block reward gets lowered enough until there aren't that many people selling anymore. Um, but with something like Monero, it doesn't have this huge selling pressure. Because I think with something like Zcoin, every year like 30% of the total coin supply or 40% is mint, or it's rewarded out in a block reward, and like that's a lot. That's a lot of the total network, and so it can really push down the price. Actually, I think if you look at Zcash in the beginning, its price shot way up, sort of due to supply issues and use issues, but then the price shot way down, and then took it a long time to recover, just because there's such a sell pressure from the miners. But with Monero, there's not something like that, so you don't have to worry about that. That's not a huge benefit. That obviously comes at the trade-off of it being an older coin, but again, because it's older, it has a low sell pressure from the miners, and that continual reward helps to keep it alive. And that's the last point there, I guess, on the low price to circulation issue. But the next thing is its continual emission, and I talked about that before, but the continual emission ensures its low fees. The reason why, again, I talked about this before, if you have no block reward, then there's no incentive for miners to mine unless the miners receive transaction fees. But if there's transaction fees, then using the coin is less useful. So there's two competing basic incentives, I guess. There's the incentive of users to have low fees, but then there's incentive of miners to have high fees, and you need both of these. Like, you need the network security, so they're both competing against each other, and it's going to cause issues, and the fees are going to be a lot higher than necessary. But the continual coin emission keeps a block reward, so it makes sure that miners have less of a reason to make fees higher. Like I said, that adds 10 to 20 years of the coin lifespan, because why would you even use a coin? Like, if you can make a coin that just has a block reward, people would be more willing to use that than to use a coin that has fees. That's my personal thought. But the other thing, it also causes issues with volatility. I'll get to that later. That's a very interesting aspect within cryptocurrencies, the volatility and how to solve that. I'm not going to talk about that, but having a higher block reward is actually good later on, because once the block reward goes towards zero, then the price will just keep increasing, and that actually causes issues with businesses, because if the price of the coin rises too quickly, it makes more sense just to do nothing and hold on to the coin rather than to do business, which is a bad thing too. But anyways, that's another topic for another time. The final point I'll make on this continual coin emission, other than keeping fees low and adding to the coin's lifespan, is that it adds to the total network security. Any block reward ensures that miners will mine, and miners, when they mine, that's ensuring the network security. That's ensuring that transactions are valid. That's an absolutely essential thing to the network. That's why when the block reward drops to zero, like, that's stupid, because you're dropping the reward for something essential to the network to zero, and then making people pay fees for something that's essential to the network that the block reward already paid them for. And if you keep the block reward at like 3%, that's not going to increase the price of your coin. So I don't know why people don't do it that way. But Monero has at least a little bit of this with its continual 0.3 Monero block reward. Like I said, that's less than 1%, and it never increases. So eventually, that'll be a moot point anyway, but it adds lifespan onto the coin. The 2-minute block time, we talked about this earlier, but what I really wanted to talk about is why this is big for corporations. More blocks equal more confirmations. Why does that matter? Well, in the corporate world, time is money, and the way a blockchain works is a blockchain gives security equal to the time that a transaction has been on the blockchain, and this security doesn't technically actually occur. It doesn't happen until a confirmation occurs. The issue is you can't have an infinite number of confirmations, because that will actually lower the total network security. So confirmations can't be too quick. Well, in Bitcoin, it's 10 minutes long. So that's decent. A 10-minute time, like, that's a decent time. But let's say you're in some big company and you just made some big deal, and or maybe you make a lot of big deals. You're some sort of brokerage company, and you look on the blockchain and you evaluate the risks of different financial transactions and how much security you want on your transaction, and you come out with time of you want 34 minutes on the blockchain exactly, and that's when you reach, like, when it's like that's secure enough that you can make this transaction, which is a high value transaction, something you need to be secure. I mean, you can do it at 34 minutes. Well, in Bitcoin, if you looked at it, you'd be like, well, we can jump the gun early and do it at 30 minutes, but then, that would be too early according to your calculations, and so you're like, well, we'd prefer not to. So with Bitcoin, you'd have to choose between jumping the gun at 30 minutes or waiting the extra 6 minutes at 40 minutes. And like I said, in the corporate world, time is money. So this can be a big issue. So you might just go with Monero for the simple fact that they have a 2-minute block time. So you could literally, basically on the money, hit the 34 confirmations, be like, after 34 confirmations, like, that's secure enough, and we're gonna make the transaction right after that. And I know that example, for anyone who's super familiar with blockchain, that simplifies it a little bit. It's a little more of a calculation than just that, but that's why 2-minute block times can be easier, as because they offer security in smaller increments, you can check your security at different time intervals, and that can be useful. Um, the next thing is it's a quality of life thing for beginners, and it makes it tester friendly. What I mean by that is when you first use a blockchain or a cryptocurrency, generally speaking, you start up your own wallets and you send your own cryptocurrency to yourself. And so if you're doing it on the Bitcoin network, yes, like it is true, as soon as you send the Bitcoin to your own wallet, that Bitcoin will show up. But it will just be pending. You'll have to wait, the 10 minutes for a block to get solved. The thing with having a shorter block time is you'll have to wait a shorter time in order for it to get solved. And so that just makes it really nice, because it's like, okay, if you're a beginner, it's like you send these coins to yourself, it shows up. You want to make sure that the confirmations work. You want to make sure everything works. And so after 2 minutes, you see that confirmation. You're like, yep, all right. At least I've got one confirmation, so I got that going for me. Or if you're sending it to like an exchange, if you're sending money to a Bitcoin exchange, you can wait, 10 minutes or sometimes longer, depending if the block takes a long time. But sometimes, it's like, I'd really like to know if that Bitcoin got sent there, and waiting this long isn't ideal. But with Monero, you can send it, and after 2 minutes, you can look and you can be like, okay, yeah, I've at least got one confirmation, so I at least have that first one. Like, I know it doesn't have a million, but I at least have that first one to know everything has started correctly. So that's always nice to know. And then the final thing that I guess I'm going to talk about with Monero here is the smooth difficulty and block reward. This just allows fair entry to newcomers as far as the mining goes, and it's because it avoids the market-changing supply shifts associated with the halving of the block reward. So like with Bitcoin, every 4 years the supply is cut in half. With Monero, it's a smooth block reward change, and so that just makes it easier for new miners, because mining's difficult as it is, and if you have to, like, if you, let's say you were trying to mine Bitcoin, but the halving event occurs in, 8 months, and you want your miner to run for, 3 years or something before you want to trash it. Well, the problem with this is that halving, it's like, should you wait until after the halving occurs or before the halving occurs to mine? Is this just a bad time to start mining? It's really hard to tell, and it just makes it harder to tell. I'm not saying it's impossible. The markets already sort of do that. It just makes everything harder. And because it makes everything harder, this is bad for newcomers and small-scale production. But like I said, Monero, it's got a smooth block reward, so Monero supports small-scale production. I'm sure the mining of Monero is a bit centralized, just like the Bitcoin mining. That's kind of hard to avoid, and what can you do? But this smooth block reward and difficulty, as well as the continual mining, or the mining block reward, that the 0.3 Monero that it has for the continual block reward, all of this supports small scale production, and that's generally speaking good for the community and the network as a whole. But anyways, like I said, Monero is very interesting. It's got quite a high circulating supply, and like I said, most coins with a high circulating supply I'm not the biggest fans of, but this one's very interesting, especially because of the continual block reward. That means that even though it has a high block or high circulating supply, it should last longer than most coins that have about half its supply, which includes things like Dash and you know, there's a lot of other ones. It probably, like Monero will probably die around a similar time that Zcash will. Monero will probably die earlier than Zcash, but Zcash follows the same halving that Bitcoin does, so it'll be a similar timeline, and so that's very interesting. Instant privacy is great. The ring signatures are great. There's a lot of great things about this coin, and the other thing is that because it already has a continual 0.3 block reward, they might be able to, like the developers might be persuaded into increasing that block reward. So like I think Bitcoin will die a hard death and it won't increase the block reward once the block reward goes to 0. I think that's just the way it's going to go. But with Monero, they might decide to increase the block reward eventually, and I think that would really be like, I think that's necessary if your coin's going to last longer than 25 to 50 years. Like you have to have at least 2% total block reward, like continually, once the initial block reward to incentivize, you know, first adopters wears off. You have to have some sort of block reward afterwards. Monero has it. I just wish it would be a little bit bigger. But like I said, this makes Monero a very interesting buy, especially because it's under $100 and the privacy it offers, like, it's beautiful. But anyways, that's my spiel on Monero. Look forward to new videos coming here in just a few days.